everyone. Today's story is Sailing Ships and Sinking Spoons. Author Jamyan Gladsen, illustrator Nuang Dorji, publisher Pratham Books. A level 3 story. Now let's get started with the story, children. Tenzing and Tashi were two young Tibetan monks. They lived in a small monastery on a beautiful green hill. Here, it was lovely when it rained. When Tashi looked out of the window late one morning, the rain was coming down hard. Rivulets were forming where the water had made paths on the muddy road. Tashi couldn't think of a better way to spend the afternoon than sailing paper boats. Tashi and Tenzin set about making many paper boats. As soon as it stopped raining, the boys ran outside. They sailed the paper boats they had made. Some big, some small. The boats floated nicely along the path. The two young monks were happy. So children, have you ever done this? Have you ever sailed the paper boats? And it feels amazing. Look at how happy the children are sailing the paper boats. As they trotted back home, they saw Jen Lobsang. Genla lived in the monastery and told the children the most wonderful stories. Genla, shouted Tenzing, can you tell us a story about why boats float? Gen Lobsang thought for a minute and said, I don't know why boats or ships for that matter float, but I am curious to find out. Genla, a polite way of addressing the teacher in Tibetan. Genla and the children decided to go and ask Miss Sonam, the science teacher, if she knew why boats float. Tenzing and Tashi gently pulled Gen Lobsang from his chair. They held his hands to help him walk. When they reached her room, Miss Sonam was reading a book. Tashi Delek, said Genla, Tashi and Tenzing. Tashi Delek, she replied. We have a question for you, said Genla. Tashi Delek, a common Tibetan greeting. Tashi means good fortune and Delek means well-being. So, Tashi Delek is the way they greet each other. Yes, can you tell us what makes boats float on water, miss? Tenzin asked. I can, said Miss Sonam. Or maybe we can find out together. But they knew it. Miss Sonam was giving instructions. Tenzing, please bring a plastic basin from the kitchen. Tashi, please fetch a small bucket of water. Genla, hold this apple. Please don't eat it. Instructed Miss Sonam. And they began with the explanation of the question. Miss Sonam asked Tashi to fill the tub to the brim. Now Genla, she said, dip the apple in the tub, please. Enough to cover it completely in water. And they began with the experiment. They started dipping the apple in the tub so that it is immersed completely in water. And what did they find? Let's find out. Genla gently dropped the fruit into the tub and pushed it down with his little finger. Some water spilled. Tashi and Tenzing shrieked. The water is overflowing. Genla let go of the apple and it rose up. Miss Sonam was smiling. What happened here? She asked. So, the apple did not get immersed. It just came out and the water was spilled. And now Miss Sonam is asking the children about what is happening there. Genla pushed the apple into the water, said Tenzing. Water spilled, said Tashi. The apple is floating, said Genla. Correct answers, all of you, said Miss Sonam. Now, can you tell me how much water spilled? Tenzing, was it about half a cup? 1 cup? Now let's find out this answer as well, children. Can anyone guess out of you? Now let's find out the right answer. Tenzing looked at the water on the table and on the floor. He said, maybe 1 cup. That sounds right, said Miss Sonam. Genla and Tashi nodded in agreement. Now take the apple out. Tashi, fill up the tub again. Here, Tenzin, will you drop the spoon into the water? Tenzin did. This spoon sank to the bottom. Too heavy, said Genla. Now as heavy as a ship in the sea, said Tenzin. Very little water spilled this time. Not even a quarter of a cup, said Tashi, a little sad. Again, you are all correct, said Miss Sonam. So the experiment continued. Now this time they experimented with the spoon. Look at how they are experimenting with the spoon, and very little water had spilled. Then she asked, do you see? After Genla dropped the apple into the water, the apple pushed some water away before it could float. Is that the water that spilled? Asked Tenzing. Yes, so the apple could float because it pushed away more water than its own weight. That means the apple is lighter than the water it pushed away. What about the spoon then? Genla said. Well, the spoon also pushed some water away, but much less. Certainly less than its own weight, so it sank. So, this is the reason of these two experiments. What about the large ships in the sea on which there are many people? Asked Tenzin. And many spoons that sank, added Tashi. The spoons won't make a ship sink, Tashi. The ship is big enough to push away a lot of water. Again, like the apple, more water than its own weight. You don't notice it because in the ocean there is so much water. The ship is still lighter than the amount of water that it pushes away. They were all quiet for a bit. I think I understand, said Tenzin slowly. And he was in a deep thought about the explanation, as if he was understanding the explanation. I hope, children, you have also understood about it. Can we sail some boats now? Asked Tashi. It's time for my tea, said Genla. Miss Sonam smiled. Yes, enjoy yourselves, she said, and gave the boys color paper to make boats. Tenzin and Tashi made more colorful boats and set them down in the water. I don't see any water spilling now, said Tashi. No, silly, the water doesn't always spill. It just gets pushed away, replied Tenzin. So, children, did you notice this point? That was a tub full of water to the brim, so the water spilled. But the explanation is the water just gets pushed away, and in the ocean or in the rivulets you will not be able to find the spilled water. It just gets pushed away. I think the boats just make some space for themselves in the stream, said Genla. They watched the blue and yellow boats, red and green boats and white boats sailing like prayer flags floating in the stream. And how wonderful experience they had watching the colorful paper boats float in the stream. Look how happy they are and how colorful paper boats are looking. Now the question is, what is gravity? What would happen if Tenzin dropped a football from the top of a tree? Would it fall to the ground or rise towards the sky? Yes, that's right. It would fall because of a force called gravity. Did you know that everything gets pulled towards the earth by that force? And that force is known as gravitational force or gravity. Now, what is buoyancy? What would happen if Tashi dropped a football into a bucket of water? Would gravity pull the football to the bottom of the bucket? Yes, but in water, there is an upward force that opposes gravity. It is called buoyancy. As gravity tries to pull the football down, buoyancy tries to push it up. In the case of the football, buoyancy is stronger than gravity, so it floats. What would happen if he drops a brick into the bucket? Why? And guess the answer, children. In that case, the brick is heavier and gravity will pull it downwards. Now, what is displacement? When you drop an object into water, it tries to make space for itself by pushing some water aside. In other words, the object displaces water to make space for itself. Bigger objects like a basketball displace more water than smaller ones like a cricket ball. A long time ago, a Greek scientist named Archimedes discovered that when the weight of the water displaced by an object is more than the weight of the object, it floats. So that is the logic, children, and it was discovered by a great Greek scientist a long time ago, and his name is Archimedes. That is why apples float in water. Can you guess why other objects sink? Now, what is density? Every object around us is made of tiny particles that can't be seen with the naked eye. Density is how closely these particles are packed in an object. The weight of Tashi's small glass marble may be the same as Miss Sonam's apple. But why is the apple bigger? Because there is more space between the particles in the apple. In the marble, the particles are much closer to each other. An apple is less dense than a marble. Generally, dense objects sink in water. So got it, children? The dense objects sink in water. Here is a game you can play with your friends. Pick 4 or 5 objects. Guess which ones will float and which will sink. Then drop them one by one into a bucket or tub of water to check which ones are sinking and which ones are floating, and find out by yourself. And have fun, children. I hope you have got these concepts clear now. Thank you so much.